Welcome to NFL Daily, where they would never make up an injury about us before putting us on injured reserve for the season.
Get him, Gregg.
I'm Gregg Rosenthal, and I'm here in the Chris Wesseling podcast studio with Patrick Claybon and Cynthia Frelund.
Woo! We're here, baby.
Never had this trio as a podcast, but we have done a television show together for a few years, Game Debut.
Spoiler alert, it comes back
There we go.
the Thursday, so the
Friday.
whatever. The day after the first game of the season.
I'm
Yeah?
excited for
Whatever.
it. That's a show where
Soon.
we pick games, where we go through every games. I like to think of it as man versus model.
Yep.
And the model being Cynthia's computer system.
I thought it was just me. I'm not a
you as well. And
I've gotten too old for that now. Darn it.
That is the way to characterize the show. I have not warranted inclusion
sorry.
in the description of the show
Men-
because I have not
Men
deserved
versus the model.
Man versus model. And Patrick's there too. Sorry.
Actually,
parentheses.
Patrick could be a model, so
Yeah.
it works out. He's a really good actor.
Lies.
We've seen. Remember, all of us are
True.
really good actors. We were in a really fun commercial together.
That was fun. Little Caesars come back at us if you're
Yes.
involved
Michigan
in the
brand.
2024 season.
Still want to be a part of the family. Like we enjoy Little Caesars. I do think
Yeah.
I have been in contention in all of these seasons, but
Okay.
then I really go on tilt
Yeah,
at
you
some
do.
point,
You
and
do.
it just goes horribly wrong.
And yeah, Cynthia and I have done this show. I think this is either the 5th or 6th season now.
I think it's.
And I was not a competitor. I was not even close to
I
winning
thought he was
the,
going to say he wasn't a
the
fan.
first
I was like,
three.
oh, sorry.
But I'm a back-to-back defending champion.
You are.
So the model
You
has
are.
got to step up.
model does.
We're going to be doing some math today, actually. I
Who
mean,
doesn't love math?
it's going to be more fun than that. We did a power
Hey,
poll
math is fun.
where we each submitted our power rankings, and in Cynthia's case, it's her win projection model, which is even more exciting to me. And we averaged them all together, and we decided kind of going into the season. This is the last week, really, before our week 1 schedule. And I just kind of wanted to say, where are we? How do we view the league right now? And then we can look back on it at the end of the year. That's how we looked at it. So we have some fun exercise this week. We have an AFC and NFC preview also coming up. I'm going to be going over all the cuts, and a few of them started on Monday, but for the most part, they're going to be happening on Tuesday, so I'll do that with Evan Silva. But before any of that, let's do some news. CeeDee Lamb, it's done. It happened. He has signed with the Dallas Cowboys, and if you had to guess what day would it possibly happen, I would have guessed the Monday, almost 2 weeks before the season starts, because that just gives you enough time to sign. That was my guess for Trent Williams. That one hasn't happened yet. We'll talk about that in a second. But the financials, frankly, aren't that interesting. It's just Justin Jefferson, but a little less, which if I'm in the Cowboys front office, I'm just thinking like, well, why didn't we just do that 3 months ago? Just take Justin Jefferson's contract, which was 4 for $140 with 110 guaranteed, and then say to CeeDee, you're great. You haven't produced quite as much as Justin Jefferson. Let's go 4 for $136, 100 guaranteed. And that gets the deal done, Cynthia.
I mean, but he got his summer off.
Yeah.
He did, I'm sure he did fun things, he didn't have to go to camp out here in California. He didn't have to do anything.
Oxnard's nice, though.
Oxnard is hot. It's like, it's smoking up there sometimes. You're like, oh, it's like, I've been there and it's been like swampy.
It's like a 20-minute ride from the beach. I mean, I'm not going to stay in Ventura or something. They're not allowed to.
But he's been there before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been there before. He's done all of this. I'm with you, Greg. They needed you in the room, apparently. I would have hopped in there. CeeDee could have given me a little bit of a percentage.
3%, I think, is what they get.
To say, hey, why not do this? Because the price isn't going down.
Nope.
The price is never going to go down. But it was like Colleen prophesized last week. Maybe all these things happen. And we do Dak right as the Chiefs are getting their Super Bowl rings before the game on Thursday. Like maybe that's how it all goes.
I guess that's the bigger question. And Dak's been practicing this whole time. And yeah, they gave $38 million on the signing bonus for CeeDee so that they could call it a record when the insiders report that it was a record signing bonus. Every agent wants some sort of record, and there's a way to slice it 8 different ways.
Right.
So he got that record, and it's well-deserved. Look, they've done a great job identifying talent in the draft, so you got to give Cowboys credit for that. It's one reason why I'm not as worried about the Deron Bland injury because they've done a good job drafting cornerbacks, and they have another guy ready to step in. I don't think Dak wants to sign with the Dallas Cowboys long term. I think he wants to push this into the future. What do you think?
Is he going to be a team you like's quarterback?
I don't know who he's going to be, but I think he wants to see what the world looks like next February and March. That's all. That he's reached this far, that he's annoyed enough with the situation and knows he can make more money by just kind of kicking the can.
Well, he's an Athletes First person. You know, they're located in Newport Beach. Just saying. So I do know, I mean, obviously agents could be anywhere and they go for any team, but I don't know. I just feel like I'm with you. I don't think we see Dak there next year, but that's not, it's just informed by tea leaves, not by math or data.
Yeah, and there's no need for bombast from Dak. Like what he said about previous quarterbacks and going to other teams, I think is entirely true. I think he would be just as comfortable being a Dallas Cowboy as he would not being a Dallas Cowboy. And
Dak's like really mature now.
Yeah. And like I feel like it'd be more comfortable to be a quarterback of any team than the Dallas Cowboys. That's just me. Just doesn't seem comfortable. And yeah, I mentioned Trent Williams before. There was a report from ESPN, Jeremy Fowler, that Trent Williams is willing to skip games if he doesn't get his contract fixed, which almost goes without saying. That's what a holdout is. But I think just the fact that that's getting pushed to the front right now on a day that I thought he might be signing maybe tells you he's not as close to signing. And he would be the rare player that I believe would push it into the regular season just because he's made enough money that the money he's losing maybe isn't going to bother him that much. And he knows he's one of the greatest players of all time, and he's 36 years old. That's a big part of it.
I mean, he's already signed, sealed, delivered to Canton no matter what happens now, right? But I'm looking at the opportunity for him, and I watched that Raiders and Niners game, and I've said this now. Patrick's had to hear it like 3 times today, but Brock Purdy sliding was scary to me. Like, and that was
Wait, why 3 times? You did Fantasy Live earlier. Everyone should check that out. It's on air now every day of the week.
Yep.
So check it out at 6 p.m. Eastern.
And then we were sitting in the green room talking about it, and I brought it up again because
you guys are just all about ball.
It's all ball.
All ball.
Even in the green.
All ball.
I was just sitting by myself alone at the huddle, just eating.
Why didn't you text us?
Well, I texted you what the news rundown was going to be. I didn't know you.
That's on us for not being like, hey, Greg, we're downstairs.
It's okay.
Come.
It's okay.
So, cool kids.
So you didn't like Brock Purdy sliding, yeah?
No. It scared me. It scared me. It didn't look natural. I mean, it just was not a baseball slide. It was like my dogs pulled me down, and I was a little,
Because this should almost go without saying, but if you had to choose as a 49ers fan, which player is more necessary to have the top shelf offense that we need on the field, Ayuk or Trent Williams? It's Trent Williams just because of how great a player in the position he plays.
Yes.
And I don't get the logic that like, well, if we do this with Trent, you don't have to treat anybody else like Trent. Like Cynthia said, Trent's going to the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Trent had people mess with his money throughout his career. Had a team and a GM like massage a cancer diagnosis. Like Trent's been through a lot. Like just give Trent his money, get him on the football field, and try to win a Super Bowl. It seems weird. The Ayuk stuff is weird to me. The Trent stuff is even weirder to me.
And Ayuk was at that game, traveling with the team to the Raiders. It really seems to me like that is just a matter of time. All right, we're going to go quickly through the rest of the news, but there were some just interesting nuggets. The Dolphins, their head coach, Mike McDaniel, said Bradley Chubb, Isaiah Wynn going to the PUP list. Odell Beckham's uncertain, so they're not putting him on it now, which to me says they're hopeful, I think, that he plays in the first few weeks of the season, but they also literally have not seen him practice yet, and he didn't practice on Monday.
Yeah, it was a little... I mean, the Dolphins, if you look at their team as like a healthy team, it's a good team. With all of these injuries, it starts to become a little less... The picture becomes a little less rosy, especially in the AFC East, which is a weirdly volatile... It's a very volatile division.
I got to start looking at the lines for week 1 because Dolphins, Jaguars, like the Dolphins to me are the classic, like, man, they're a tough week 1 team to talk about because of the injuries you talked about, but also because like Mike McDaniel has now a 2-year history of cooking up some insane stuff week 1 that just blasts the other team.
Who do you trust more? Mike McDaniel architecting plays or Press Taylor? That's the question.
I would go Mike McDaniel in that Jaguars.
Just saying.
Another Chubb, Bradley's brother, Nick, will also be on PUP, but the Browns activated...
That's new, though. That's not new. I mean, we knew.
No, we kind of knew that, but...
It's official now, but we knew.
It's just checking the box. I was pleasantly surprised Jalen Phillips is back practicing close to full right now and might play week 1. Sounds like he will, which is great news for the Dolphins. But yes, Nick Chubb to PUP was not a surprise. And they activated a 4-pack of starters, though. Dalvin Tomlinson, Jedrick Wills, Jack Conklin, and Greg Newsome. So that's
Wills and Conklin to me, and Greg Newsome too, but in the back, like, that's a great defense. But like, that O-line is a big deal because I don't know what I'm looking at with that Browns offense.
Yeah, and we don't know if they're going to be ready for week 1. We'll get that
Correct.
next week. But that's just kind of checking box on a story in terms of the Browns that we followed a lot. The Seahawks lost Uchenna Nwosu. He only played a handful of snaps. He was going to play 1 series in that last preseason game. Unfortunately, got injured, hurt his knee. He's a candidate for injured reserve. The prognosis is 2 to 6 weeks. They just traded away a pass rusher, and so then they just traded back for a pass rusher. So they traded Darrell Taylor to the Bears, but then they get Travis Gibson from the Jaguars. You just kind of hate to see them lose. Who I would say, if you had to choose one, is maybe their most important edge rusher and maybe just defensive lineman, period, Uchenna Nwosu.
Yeah, I don't think it was a probably about it. And then we saw last year, because Mike Mack's defense was so good, like the contributions from Jadeveon Clowney, especially like early on in the season, were so key, and like that edge piece is such a key part. And now they're clearly scrambling to do a replacement, where just at a time where these guys aren't available. Like, there's nobody to go get off the couch or in a deal if they're valuable, unless, of course, it's somebody maybe in New York that maybe they don't want to pay, and maybe we could figure something out.
That would be fun, but they've already traded for Travis Gibson. So they traded
I don't know if Travis Gibson precludes you from
from doing that move. I guess you're right. That was like a late round pick. And if the Jaguars are giving up on you as an edge guy, it's probably not a great sign, but he's been a backup for the Bears before. That is a rare case. People always say, like, hey, you're putting the tape out there for all the other 32 teams, but you don't actually see that many players get claimed off waivers or things happen. But Travis Gibson had like a great preseason game right before this trade, and so that probably helped him.
Yeah.
Juju Smith-Schuster is back with the Chiefs. I was a little surprised about this. I guess it's Rashee Rice insurance.
I think it's more familiarity with the scheme, because now you've got, Hollywood, you've got Xavier Worthy, you have some injuries, and then now you got a guy who knows how to run, like, he knows the playbook. I'm not suggesting it's helpful from the standpoint of fantasy, or he's not going to be catching a bunch of touchdowns, but I just think it creates a little bit more depth, and you don't have to teach someone something. They already know.
Yeah, especially considering like Hollywood's had the health concerns this preseason as well. You get a guy who knows where to go and how to play within this.
Travis Kelce's still there? They're fine.
I think they're fine, but the vibe, it might be, maybe it's more vibes too. Like, I can't imagine Juju Smith-Schuster is active on game day for the Chiefs. This is a good wide receiver group. And Juju Smith-Schuster did not get cut from the Patriots because, like, he was a problem. It was because he couldn't play football anymore. Like, his body, unfortunately, I think all those blocks and the way he played football, kind of like a young Hines Ward, it happens in football. The body just broke down, where by all accounts in Patriots camp, he couldn't move. He couldn't separate. And they owed him $8 million guaranteed, and they still cut him. So we'll see. I guess it's just insurance. Maybe he's someone that really is there in case Rashee Rice gets hurt. That's my theory. All right, 2 other weird stories. I mentioned Ernest Jones. The show with Nick is on the trade block from the Rams. It was clear it came from the team, not from the player. Just a little update that he's not even with the Rams anymore at practice, and Sean McVay was uncertain if he ever would be again. And so that says to me they've just kind of decided they're going to trade this dude for whatever reason. We can get into another time when it actually happens. But the fact he's away from the team tells me it's probably it for him, which is interesting. Had a nice run, was a team captain, helped them win a Super Bowl. And I think they're going to end up starting this undrafted kid, Omar Spates, who they're really high on at middle linebacker. And then finally, this is minutia that not many shows would bother to cover, but I found it interesting. Did you see the third quarterback rule story today, Cynthia? Okay, how do we explain this? We thought, because the owners approved a rule, that you could bring a guy from your practice squad as your third quarterback to the active roster for games, that it would be easier for teams to kind of keep a third quarterback, and then you keep activating him. It's very small minutia. I didn't know this was a thing, but the NFLPA, the Players Association had to approve that. So it really wasn't a rule, and the Players Association said no. The takeaway for me is just that teams are more likely to keep quarterbacks right now when they're cutting down their players to 53 this week.
Right. It just
That
means
makes
they're on the
sense.
active as opposed to on the practice squad.
Yes.
They're trying to. I think the spirit of it is to not hoard people on your practice squad, but now you're just going to hoard them on your 53. Like there aren't 32 great. Like there aren't 32 amazing quarterbacks, let alone 64 or 96. Like it's hard to find to get quarterback right, especially with injuries and.
I find this stuff interesting. I guess the reason they pushed against this most likely is they just want the active roster to be bigger. Stop pretending the practice squad
That's
is your
right.
active roster. For people who don't pay attention to this type of stuff, which is 99% of the people that love football
In the world.
they've really changed the practice squad significantly year
Yes.
after year after year, where it's
Yes.
this huge thing that you really have a 70-man roster and you can do all these elevations, and that I kind of like, but just make it active, and so that's gonna all be part of like the next CBA and making
Yep.
the 18th game if they re-sign stuff. But it never made sense to me. Like, why can't we have more than 48 players active on a game day, Patrick? I don't know.
Let's carve it out right now. Let's make this particular point a negotiation, and let's go from 53 to something else, because I definitely understand the PA's position in this, where we're doing all this manipulation with the
Yep.
practice squad and the elevations. Let's just pay somebody.
Right.
Right,
Let's
and they
just
do
pay
get
somebody
paid
instead.
if they're on the active roster,
Active,
right?
Exactly.
Yes.
So let,
Active
when
has
they
a
elevate
minimum.
them,
Yeah,
yeah.
active has a minimum. Practice does not.
And then it's very very
It's true.
confusing.
The other, that's the other thing I will say, just to put a point on like things people don't like look at. I think the extra coaches challenge flag is the same thing. Nobody's thinking about. We're all talking about the new kickoff rule. Blah blah blah. Kickoff rule. Well, now you don't have to get both of your challenges right to have the third challenge. So you just have 3. Like before, you had to get both challenges right. You just have to get one of the 2 right now to earn a third challenge. That's going to take certain coaches who are very smart with it up a level. They're going to get another timeout, basically.
And then
Just saying.
eventually, and I hope to and plan to be doing this NFL Daily Show a long time. So
Well, it's daily, so you have to do it every day
right,
forever.
but if we can somehow remember this, Eric, in the year 2026 when this comes true, eventually they're gonna just let you have as many challenges as you want if you keep being right, because it's still stupid. There will be one game where some coach goes 3 for 3, and then there's another 4th call, and then when after that game happens. Then they'll change the rule.
What
But
if-
they always wait for like a dumb reason.
what if hypothetically,
Yeah.
we just fix all the mistakes without anybody being involved?
That would be fun too,
I'd be
without the
down.
challenges.
Yeah, I'd be down.
That could happen sometime too. That would be from the eye.
But think about
in
it
the
though.
sky.
Now, but in the way it currently is, you only have to be right on half of those 2 challenges. Why wouldn't you take one that's dicey?
Well, yeah,
Put it
you
out there,
should.
get an extra time.
It's going to be annoying to slow down the game
Yes.
a little bit, but that's how it always should have been.
Anyways.
So I like it.
We're not
better.
breezing through any of these games anywhere.
I know, Patrick, but pace
We're
of
sitting there.
sport,
We're sitting there the entire day on Sunday.
pace of sports, you can feel it. It matters. That the 3:01 length game, it feels way better than the 3:14. Especially as someone that's we've been watching football our whole lives. If you're a fan, like the 2:55 game feels great. The 3:20 game doesn't feel good. I'm just telling you, it makes a big
I could not tell you the length of any particular football game that I enjoyed, Greg.
Well, after the fact, no. But while you're watching it, that's what matters. You know what else matters a lot is our power poll. I mean, this is going to
Yes.
determine who's mad and who's happy among all the fan bases. We're going to
Ooh.
take a quick break. And yes, we're going to come back and reveal who are the best teams and the worst teams in the NFL, because we know.
We should get a physical power poll. Plan it, please.
Back on NFL Daily with my 2 co-hosts of Game Day View. I'm excited.
Woo!
But my 2 co-hosts of NFL Daily, more importantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And 2 co-hosts, but only one
It was me.
celebrated a birthday this weekend.
Oh, thanks.
Happy birthday to Cynthia Frelund.
Thanks.
What did you do?
Nothing too crazy, Went to the beach, hung out a little bit, chilled out. The dogs were especially nuts, so we have 2 now. 2 rescue dogs. One came from the draft. His name's Clyde. He's getting settled
Wait, you
in.
got one of the dogs that were on the stage at the draft,
Yeah.
or in that from that
Yeah.
group? That's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Because I think if our listeners watch the draft, they saw the dog thing's a thing now at the draft, and you have one of those.
Well,
Does that make them more valuable, like more lovable?
Yeah, he's the most lovable. I mean,
Yeah.
they're both the most lovable. But here's the thing. I don't think like the cool part of the draft is all the wood and like the materials from the draft they made into a homeless shelter and a spay and neuter center. So pretty cool, like recycling effort of that huge thing that they built. And not gonna lie, like Clyde just stole my heart. And I didn't even,
Great
didn't ask Kyle. Just showed up at home.
Your significant other, Kyle.
Here's a
not
dog.
your other dog.
No, I didn't ask Gordy either.
Yes. Just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, but
for the listeners.
I just showed up.
But Cynthia, I gotta say, I've known her a long time. She's doing LA right. Patrick and I are close. We love our families. We're close-ish to the beach, but just to live like right there in the beach town. If you're gonna live in LA, just do it all the way, and you do. And
you guys did it right because like you had your children at like a normal age.
Well, I'm not getting into the children part of it. I'm more getting into the location.
Right, like we're like what I think we're called like dinks.
What does that mean?
Dual income, no kids.
Okay.
So dinks, it's a little easier to live at the beach.
I don't like that phrase because it just sounds negative.
No, it's a great thing. I'm happy for that.
Bunch of things.
Eventually I'll steal one of your kids.
Breaking news. They're getting too old for that. They'll be in college before you.
Difficult to.
I'll give them back for them because that sounds expensive.
So we each submitted our power pool.
Yep.
We did it a little differently because I just thought I know how Cynthia's mind works, and her mind works through the machine, through the model. And so I just asked for her win projections because the amount of numbers and everything that goes into those projections are more significant, I would say, than Patrick and I just doing it off the top of our head. So why don't we take those numbers and combine them with what Patrick and I are doing off the top of our head and create an ultimate poll that can't be wrong. So we're going to go through in a bunch of different tiers. I named the tiers, and the first tier, we're going to go bottom to top, is called The Season Ends in Week 18. Now, in general, we're not saying these are predictions exactly. It's just where they're at right now. But I just decided that these 8 teams, it would be very surprising if they made the playoffs. And the NFL, we're selling hope at this time of year. And so when I think hope, I think you got a chance to make the playoffs. And look, the teams on this list, they have a chance. But to me, they are the 8 teams, how I would categorize it. If they made the playoffs, I personally would be surprised. Number 32, the Patriots. Wow, sad times. 31, the Panthers. Number 30, Giants. This isn't nice music. Number 29, the Broncos.
I think music is perfect.
Number 28, the Titans.
I like how you said that. Titans.
I dropped that T often, so now I'm trying to make it.
I like it.
The Raiders are 27. Commanders at 26, a little higher than I would expect it. And 25, Cardinals a little higher than I would have expected. So maybe I'll start there. You guys are a little higher on the Commanders than I was when I looked at all of our boards. That putting them in another 25, like
when
why?
Another team in your division also appears on that list, it just makes it a little bit easier.
Okay, that helps.
Yeah, the significant gap there, and I already said I was irrationally a little too high on the Washington Commanders, and I'm sticking with that. A couple of those teams are significantly below where I had the Commanders, and so that's it.
You had him 25, by the way, and Cynthia had him 24 overall. So you were pretty much aligned. I was the only one. Yeah, I had a bottom 3. Because I just look at everything but Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin and think, I don't know. It doesn't look very good. And the defensive tackles and maybe the coaching staff as a whole. I like Dan Quinn like as a whole and maybe on defense. No, I think as a guy who maybe can
he's not
bring
on
a
the
team
field.
together. Yeah.
I think I'd flip the Broncos and the Raiders.
I'm glad you brought up Broncos.
Yeah.
You were on the sideline for the Broncos.
Preseason. But I would flip them, and I also went to Raiders camp too, so I've seen them both live and up close and in person. But I think I would flip the Broncos and the...
I actually had the Broncos much higher than the two of you, which surprised me. You had them second to last, Patrick. You were in between me. And I didn't think I had them that high, but I guess, Patrick, you're not really buying or feeling the positive preseason vibes. I feel like no fan base in the entire league has better vibes just based off the last month, where suddenly they think they are contenders.
And most importantly, the last 3 weeks of those months.
Yeah.
Because when I was at Broncos training camp, it was not pretty. It was decidedly not pretty. I remember on this show, I said I thought Jared Stidham was going to win the job. I told that Cynthia was like, no, Patrick. This is Bo Nix's job. And apparently, Bo really got a whole lot better after I left, and I'm glad that he did. But I still don't just looking at the rest of the roster and the way things are. It's tough for me to have them that much higher than everybody else that we had in that group.
I think that the thing that the Broncos have going for them is they're all rowing in the same direction this year. They're a really young team. They're very they decided to be Bill Parcells' model. They have big pass catchers. They're all huge. Don't even let their names fool you. Lil Jordan Humphrey, he is massive, right? So all big receivers, big targets. Gregg Dulcich is back, who a Sean Payton offense executes best when there's a really great tight end, and Bo Nix listens to what his coach wants him to do and does it. Huh?
Sure. As opposed to the last quarterback. Yeah. It could be an upgrade.
But he's a Hall of Fame, like Sean Payton, one of the best to ever
great.
do it, right? So.
Absolutely. Vance Joseph, just hasn't had a
I will
difference-making
say,
defense in a while. Not
listen, you put a white corner in, and I love you. Riley Moss, baby.
He might be
Do it, Riley.
Cooper DeJean to
I think he will. I haven't seen Cooper DeJean.
Starting lineup, yes.
But Riley Moss actually played really, really well. It was really impressive to watch. And I mean, Pat Surtain is quietly should be getting paid. Quietly not saying all the things that.
Yeah. Sean Payton, when he's asked about Patrick Surtain, is a little cagey that hey, he kind of is he's got to prove it to me. Then he's downing as a year ago. It's just a small thing. I have to admit, though, Patrick, I hate this. This is the problem with the preseason, because I was very down on this Broncos team as just they're not talented
They're
enough.
fun, though. They're having fun on the sideline.
And this whole vibes thing, plus Sean Payton is
I'm
just
telling you,
he can't lose more than 9 games.
No.
It's just kind of been proven
Okay.
so far. And even last year he did. And so then now it's now I kind of see it. So I was the one who ranked them higher than you guys. I just had them 24th or whatever. But I just thought, okay, maybe they're just going to be 7 and 9 again. Maybe I was wrong. But I hate falling for the vibes in this month.
okay, but the run game, you don't have to fall for the vibes, but the run game and stopping the run are two. Baron Browning starting the season, not injured. There's a lot of good things going on. I mean, Malcolm Roach came in there with he's the most fun. I want to have a beer with him.
Broncos employee. I get it.
I'm just telling you what I saw firsthand, and it was good things. And by the way, fantasy players, we do fantasy, whatever. Javonte Williams looks great,
Yes.
and so does Audric Estime. Audric Estime, Notre Dame, his biceps are the size of tree trunks.
Nick Shook.
They look like Nick Shook's arms, and he's not as tall as Nick Shook. Nick Shook's much bigger man than Audric. I'm geez.
Which is even more impressive for Shook that he's got the pythons like that at his height.
It's incredible. It's incredible, but it's anyway.
Beside the
He
point.
finally didn't wear a tank top on our Sunday night show. And
Why?
It was nice to me. Let's talk Titans before we get
Let's
out of
do
this
it.
group. By the way,
Uh-oh.
let's just rest in peace.
Titans.
New England Patriots, just that, okay, they're dead last and they're the Vegas favorite for the first overall pick, and everyone's just yep. I had them 20. I had them 4th to last, Patriots fans out there, but these two guys.
I had them last before I saw the offensive line in the preseason game. I wish there was a 33.
The one thing I'll say about that offensive line is almost none of those players are going to be playing the same position in week 1. Now, that's a problem in itself.
Yes.
But they were trying something and
Didn't work.
it didn't work.
They're just not showing us any. Let's put a positive spin.
Yeah, extra cagey.
They're not showing us anything.
I like their quarterback better than a lot of this bottom tier. I will say that. Like I said, Cardinals, Commanders, Raiders. Yeah, Cardinals getting a little bit of love up towards the top of this. Raiders, Titans, Broncos, Giants, Panthers, Patriots. Let's just talk Titans very quickly because I feel like they are the team I have not talked about.
Yeah, they get lost in the sauce. I feel like I don't hear as much about them either.
I am hopeful that Brian Callahan and his pops can create watchable
Papa
offense
Callahan.
because of the offensive line just improving that much. If you go from 32nd, 31st offensive line to 13th or 14th through scheme, then suddenly the guys they have can look a lot better, and Will Levis is a little fun. Do you have any hope for is there anyone in this group, by the way, where you think they do have a playoff chance? A real playoff chance.
I'm trying to remember the group again.
Yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and say that they have no chance.
Yeah, not no
we're
chance,
gonna
but you would be surprised.
I would be significantly surprised. I have them just behind a few teams that I also don't think are going in the playoffs, but I don't think
Titans.
they're not in my bottom tier where it's I would be shocked.
Yeah, look, the Titans, if they can, I just have a lot of questions, right? Obviously DeAndre Hopkins not playing in the beginning, like that's a big loss, big target there. It's a Calvin Ridley's team now. Like what? Like
There's
that.
been some weird reports about Calvin Ridley in practice, but we'll see.
Right. It's just that's what I mean. Like you've been hearing all these conflicting things, and then you have some like pieces on the defense. Like maybe we're all not seeing anything, right? Maybe we just have no idea.
Tough division too.
Tough division, very exciting division, up and coming division. So I don't know. Like that's not the one I would pick on that list that had the better chance.
Okay, shout out to the Cardinals just for getting to 25. And,
Yeah.
I think they've got some uphill climb here to be a good team, but the fact that they're 25, hey,
Helps when you have a quarterback.
we believe in you, Cardinals. All right, our next group, and this is the smallest one that we have.
Oh.
I called this Trapped in the Netherworld. Yes. Number 24, Vikings. Number 23, Chargers. And number 22, Saints. These are the teams that are just kind of like in the Bermuda Triangle of like the NFL to me right now. Vikings, Chargers, Saints. Where are they? We don't know. They're trapped in the netherworld, Patrick.
And also, I love the music. The netherworld sounds
Murky.
frightening. It's creeping me out, literally. Yeah, especially considering the quarterbacks in this particular group.
Mhm.
Like one of them being Sam Darnold, and so like there's a Sam Darnold factor there. But between Carr and Herbo, like these guys have won a lot of games, and you wonder what the particular.
Oh, I thought you were going to say one quarterback really stands out of these three. It's Justin
Well, yeah,
Herbert.
for sure he does. But everything that changed, they lose so much talent, and I'm not necessarily the biggest Gregg Roman fan or believer, and so that's where I had them there. I'm a little surprised that you guys kind of felt the same way I did about the Chargers, but with so much talent leaving, like where's it coming from?
I understand that they want to run the football. I don't think they've made any. I mean, clearly, and I think taking Joe out was a great decision.
Yes.
It doesn't make this year easier though. And is Ladd McConkey going to be your lead receiver? Like,
I don't know.
even if he's awesome, that's still a rookie, and rookies notoriously have a hard time against these NFL defenses. They're not easy to pick up right away, and you're in the AFC West, for goodness sake.
He also was a guy that was like a role player more or less in college. I mean, he just wasn't like a one. You know what I mean?
I'm just saying that it's confusing. Right. Like I like him. I think for fantasy, he could be a great pick, like for a later round guy, like cool. But for real football, hard to distinguish. And
See,
I actually thought that those Saints were going to be down in that not making the playoffs division.
So I wanted to separate these three because, well, look, it's how the numbers spit them out too, but I thought they fit well together because
Oh, they do, for sure.
I think they could make the playoffs. If in fact,
Well,
we
yeah,
haven't
'cause the
we haven't
South
done
is-
our predictions here, but I look at this exercise power ranking as different than predictions. If you're telling me the Chargers get that last AFC spot because they have a great coach and a great quarterback and they scheme up their defense a little bit, that to me wouldn't be that surprising. If it like the Saints, they won 9 games last year, and there's reason to believe they're the same essentially. And the Vikings are actually sneaky talented.
Well,
so
here's the one thing: the little trick of the schedule.
yeah,
The NFC South plays the AFC West, so it would be more likely, in my view, that the Chargers would make it than the Saints
there
because
you go.
then like the Chargers get to play perhaps some other teams that appear like the Panthers, right? Like so, and I know that the Saints do too, but the Saints also have to play the Chiefs. Like it's just to me, a
I'm
little-
debating between Chargers and Jags maybe as like my surprisey.
Would the Jags be surprised?
I don't know. Just
Gregg is
no one's paying attention to them. That's all.
definitely
Okay.
not Gregg.
Okay.
What do you mean?
I'm just kidding.
Frisky.
It's I feel the Jags' defensive doubts have been strong in your mind for a couple.
Yes.
of years.
Let's go to the next one because the Jags
Okay,
are in
there
it.
we go.
It's called Frisky, and these are
Risky.
just the teams that I consider
Ooh,
frisky.
agree.
21, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yep.
Number 20, the Chicago Bears. Not as much love as I expected. Number 19, the Steelers. Number 18, the Colts. Number 17, the Jaguars. Number 16, the Seahawks. Number 15, the Browns. Now, Patrick, you mentioned Jacksonville. I've had doubts about that defense. I got to say, having John Shipley on the show and hearing about Ryan Nielsen, sometimes scheme can make up a big difference. Trevon Walker's a little better.
Okay.
I'm a little more
There it is.
thinking about, okay, this could be a good year for Trev, and people are kind of forgetting about them. But I really like the Colts, too. I had a hard time separating those two teams. I had them both of them I had actually a little higher than this 17-18 ranking. Wow, the Bucs are the last group, the last team in this. Frisky. I think they're frisky, and they're not even in the same category as the Falcons because of you guys.
It's
No love for the Bucks.
it's not
It's not no
being
love.
It's not being anti-Bucks. I
Kind of.
appreciate those teams that are ahead of them. I too like the Colts and the Jags. I think being in the division with the Texans makes things a little more difficult for them. But as far as the overall,
I mean, you can say
value-
that, but you can also rank them 20th.
No.
When I had them 16th.
Yeah, I'm just saying the results may not ultimately reveal like my particular rankings.
Right.
Okay.
But that's because the results don't always indicate how good the actual football team.
You have the Jags though, Patrick, and then we'll move to you, Cynthia.
Yeah.
Significantly higher than the Colts. So between
I
those
do.
two teams, why do you like the Jags? Why do you put them a little higher?
I think experience as well as continuity, and I like
Okay.
you value what John says about the Jags, and I think they're getting better.
My only rank, like the reason that the Bucks end up becoming low for me is because my model doesn't love the South in general, so it's very narrow between who comes out of it between the Falcons and the Bucks. I think it's hard when you don't have. We have yet to see them have like a very consistent run game,
Mhm.
and no matter what quarterback you are, that is hard to do. I do love that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin both seem to be healthy, and Godwin's back in the slot. That is good, but it's very hard to consistently win. They've got a lot of turnover on their defense, and I know Todd Bowles is a defensive-minded head coach, but I still need to see it all kind of put together.
Yeah, in this exercise, again, it's a power rankings, not exactly like our predictions
No.
for the season. We see the Browns as
And
as
the
a
Browns,
mid-level team, and we
well,
see
the Browns, no. They're an elite defense, best defense, 1-2 maybe. But I don't know. What am I looking at with offense? And when will Nick Chubb be back? I love Nick Chubb, but like, I'm confused. I want to know what I'm looking at in the offense. I want consistency.
someone pointed out, now I forget who it was, a stat that shook me. I'm
Was it me?
down on the Browns relatively because of their defense, not because they won't be good, but just because they won't be as good. And I think it was that they gave up 29 plus points per game on the road last year. I was just like, man, that's half the season. They were a bad defense. They were literally one of the worst defenses. And they were so dominant, and it's just kind of random, and it's schedule and backups, and so yeah, like them and the Seahawks to me were perfect teams to be
Yeah.
15 and 16.
No, I'm
because
with you on that.
if each of those teams, I think they certainly have a chance to make the playoffs. I think
Yep.
each of those teams have a chance to win the division
Yep.
if everything goes right, because
Right.
the talent that they do have is like top tier talent, and that's what defines a frisky team.
I
What
like
do you think of my title of the?
Yeah, I
Frisky,
love
yeah.
Frisky because those teams, every team that's within Frisky, has a propensity, has a quarterback that can put points on the board, and
Mm.
maybe can be erratic.
Yeah.
like Baker could light it up with anybody, but also
Caleb
think
too. I think
things could go south.
Caleb's going to be. I'd rather have Caleb than Baker.
Yes.
Obviously, even this year by a decent amount, and yet I think he's going to have some magical games, and he'll have some learning moments too. The Steelers, probably lower today than they would have been if we did this exercise a month ago. I think they are taking a little bit of heat, a little bit of maybe even unfair just recency bias because just the preseason's left a bad taste in our mouth. Let's go. And so all those teams we think, at least for me, I'm speaking for myself, that if they made the playoffs, it wouldn't be that
Right.
big of a
No,
surprise.
no.
So we got about 21 of those teams where I think their fans would be kind of disappointed if they didn't make the playoffs. So that's why it's tough.
Yep.
The next one, it's more definitive. If these 5 teams don't make the playoffs, it kind of equals problems. Whether that means changes in staff in terms of coaching or just criticism from their fan base. Like their fans expect them to make the playoffs. Let's take a look at it. Number 14, the Falcons. Number 13, the Jets. Number 12, the Rams. Number 11, the Cowboys. And how about the Dolphins sneaking in the top 10 here? But I was a little harsh and decided to cut the tier line right there. I wasn't going to put them in the tier above, even though the numbers kind of said I should have. So that's where you can just put your finger on the scale if you host the freaking show, Cynthia.
I like it. The Dolphins, to me, a lot of that comes down to injuries.
Yes.
And look, I'm not gonna be popular for saying this, but do we really think the Cowboys are that good? Do we?
We had them 11th.
Of course, all Cowboys fans expect them to go.
They've
to
won
playoffs
12
every
games the
single year.
last 2 years, so they have a great quarterback,
Yes.
and they have,
And CeeDee.
to me, the best defensive player in the world, if I had to choose one.
Agreed.
So
But I'm really worried about their O-line and Ezekiel Elliott forecast to be their starting running back. I'm just saying, I'm just a little that one's a little high for me.
okay.
But they get to play in
That
the
said,
East.
I mean,
they get to play in the East. So
I'm
good for
pushing
them.
back on you, and yet when it comes to predictions, like I might just have them out of the playoffs because I feel like I need to have a few teams in and out, and I'm not picking them to win the division.
Right.
So like there's a chance there that it falls apart a little. But power rankings wise, when you just look at experience, coaching staff, the roster that they have, I'm even feeling a little better about these rookie offensive linemen. What stands out to you out of that group, Patrick?
It's the Dolphins. I have the Dolphins significantly higher than that. I understand that there's been
Oh, you were the one that did it. So you had Dolphins 6th.
Yeah, I had
You were the one that did it.
It's me.
Cynthia had
No,
him
I
9th.
had him high too.
And I had him 12th. So
I have him high too. It's just all about injuries.
Okay, 6th. That's awesome. Like why? Just
I think time together, continuity was the biggest part of the way that I put my list together. Ultimately, you've seen the Chiefs win back-to-back Super Bowls. They've been able to maintain continuity among key parts of the staff and the team. And I just think the longer you keep a group together, the better the results get as other teams, like some that we'll talk about coming up here, are getting worse. Like I think there's some title contenders that are actually getting worse. And if those teams are getting worse, then you've got teams that are up and coming that get better. And I think Miami falls into that. But we'll see. We'll see how things go.
a lot of questions though. Offensive
I
line,
feel like
defensive line,
Agreed. I think the
defense.
East, of all the divisions, the AFC East comes down to people's availability. There's a lot of injured players on the Bills. There's a lot of injured players on the Dolphins. There's a lot of injured players, or the Jets maybe don't have people coming that
You
they
have
were
the
hoping
Jets
to have.
10th, which was higher than Patrick by a good amount. Patrick had him in the middle. I was kind of between you two. And then I noticed you have Bills, Dolphins, Jets 8, 9, 10. So you see those three AFC East teams very close.
What happens is when you do projections, when things are close, it gets close to 0.5, right? So I don't have anyone in that division having like 0.6 wins, meaning 60% of the time they win. And you know how finicky the model is. You both do. So I think like it's very volatile, like the stock market the past few weeks. A lot of VIX. The VIX is high here.
Rams, I think, would have gotten a little more pop coming into this season. They're 12th here. Falcons are 14th. If it wasn't for the preseason injuries, just dimming them just a little
Injuries. They were. It was a totally like that number significantly changed.
A lot of these teams to me are boom or bust.
Yep.
Actually, I should have called that the section. Not just no playoffs equals problems. Boom or bust, because Dolphins, Cowboys, Rams, Jets, Falcons, 100%. To me, high ceiling, also could easily miss the playoffs, and that wouldn't shock me. I'm not as high on the Falcons as you guys. I just got to see it. To me, a lot of questions on the defense and even the offense, which has a lot of name value. I got to see it. Although I looked at their schedule, and, man, after their bye, if you were trying to create, and who knows how it's going to work out, but if you were trying to create like the easiest 6 or 7 game slate you possibly could, that's what the Falcons are after their bye.
If the Falcons don't win, that's the biggest no problem. Like if this is it. Like they push all.
Yeah, but here's the
stuff in
thing.
there.
That's a new staff, and
but
I know
I
it's a new. It's not
I
a
don't
new
know.
GM.
They're
but
not. People have gotten fired after 1 year before in life. Like
all they got to do is like win 9 games. No one's.
I just think if they don't somehow make the playoffs, it's going to be.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's true of the Jets and the Cowboys, certainly of this tier. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll hit the final 2 tiers. Back on NFL Daily. You've waited all show to find out who are the 9 teams.
9
that are the very best in the NFL. And this next tier is 5 of them that I'm calling just, it wouldn't be a shock if we made the Super Bowl. I'm using that word shock.
Oh, my God.
If you see these teams in the Super Bowl, it wouldn't be that surprising. So let's start at number 9, the Packers, who I expect are gonna get a lot of, like, they make the Super Bowl love. I was thinking of going that way. Number 8, Bengals. Number 7, Eagles.
You were thinking of picking the Packers to win the Super Bowl?
All offseason, I thought I was going to, and then I'm coming off of it now.
Oh, spoiler alert.
6, Bills. 5, Texans. How about the Texans being in the top 5 after being 32 in this exercise if we did it a year ago? That's an awesome group. And where do we want to start? How about the Bengals, Cynthia? You had him number 5, I believe. So that was the highest of the 3 of us. And I wanted you to talk about it.
4th place schedule, baby.
Yeah. Okay.
That's a huge deal. fourth place schedule for Joey B and his guy Jamar Chase, who I fully expect to be all good.
He's practicing now. Yeah,
he's practicing, which means likely playing. I mean, I'm not breaking news here because we don't know. But, I think it's very interesting how things like those 3 unique games can make such a big difference, especially in the North, where that's the most difficult division in football, in my estimation. So that's truly.
You had them ahead of the Ravens.
By a tiny
And
bit.
in this exercise, Patrick and I, to me, it's power rankings who has the best team where they're at now.
Well, the
We had a
Ravens,
pretty big gap between the Ravens and
I know
the
you
Bengals.
power ranked it, but I did it by win total.
I know.
I'm just saying.
No, I
I
think
think the Ravens are a better team, but I think the Bengals have a better schedule.
It's a good combo. You had them at 10th, which is relatively low, but I guess not. They finished 8th, and they're in this group where you wouldn't be surprised to be covering Joe Burrow in New Orleans.
Oh, not at all. And I think they are a better team than they were last year.
That would be fun.
Even without the Burrow Joe being back. Is something I talked about all last season. We actually talked about it earlier today, that the Bengals lost like 96% of their snaps at safety, and then they come into last season and it looked bad on the back end, and so they go get Geno Stone. Von Bell comes back. It seems like an admission. Okay, we need that.
Yeah.
And so I feel better about the team as a whole, and I think Andre Josefus looked incredible.
Complete player, I think.
The whole time that I was there for Bengals camp, and so I believe in the offense. I think the defense is better. I think they're a good team.
It's funny, the Texans finished 5th. None of us actually had them as high as 5, but it was just 6, 7, 6. We all see them in that group.
Yep.
Just the talent's pretty overwhelming. Eagles was a team that I thought I'd be the highest on. I had them 7th. Cynthia had them 2nd. Love it.
They might be my Super Bowl team. I don't do this I have to look and see how everything shakes out once all these 53 are set. But I
kind of wanted to. I'm thinking about them. I picked them to the Super Bowl the last 2 years. 1 year that was a fiasco. 1 year it was fantastic. So
well,
I don't know.
I mean, the way that this one's interesting because I think they're super boomer bust. Like if things start to go a little teeter-tottery for them, like that could be the ones who, like, I think that they're just by talent alone.
Exactly.
They are a really, really strong team. But if something did go wrong, I do see this as being like that would be terrible. So but you know what? The Niners, who are the other class of the division or the class of the NFC, to me, they're seemingly in a lot of question marks too. So who's unquestion marky?
Nobody.
Nobody.
That's a great question. I had the Bills higher than you guys. I would have had them in my first tier. I don't get I don't know if doubt's the right word, but you have the Dolphins ahead of the Bills, for instance, Patrick. I don't know. To me, it's just like they are the closest thing to the Chiefs in the NFL. I know they haven't won the Super Bowls, and he's not Patrick Mahomes. He's not, but they are the other team. 49ers, obviously, but I meant in the AFC. Just like they're so consistent. I just know who they are on defense in terms of the schematic advantage McDermott provides, and I know who Josh Allen is, and I'm not really worried about anything else.
I'm worried about the defense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to
Matt Milano not being there, huge.
Okay.
Their safeties are completely
And you guys have them 8th.
Right
It's not
now,
like you have them buried, but you do have them a tier lower than they probably would have been the last few years in this exercise.
Right now, I mean, this is the first time we'll see the no Micah Hyde or Jordan Poyer at safety in however many years. That's a big thing. And their 2 starting corners and their 3 starting corners. The best one's probably Teron Johnson. That's scary, man.
I'm going to need somebody on the defensive side of the ball to be closer to Chris Jones before I say that they're the closest thing to the Kansas City Chiefs.
What about Von Miller?
No.
I mean, we got 2014 Von like busting through.
No, you're right.
Yeah. But it's all Josh. And I love Josh, but it can't just all be Josh at this point. It seems like
good line, good system. I think good depth throughout the depth chart. Maybe not as
wide receiver.
Not as many. I disagree.
Secondary.
I think they're deep enough in this at least at cornerback and at wide receiver.
They
Deep.
really
Maybe not top shelf talent, but like enough Bs, enough B level players.
I hope
We'll see.
Look, to me, Josh cures a lot of evils, and that O-line cures a lot of evils as well. I think the way you navigate this is, can they solidify the run game? Because if they have a really solid run game that's not just Josh, that'll be fine because they can control the clock.
They can.
They can put themselves in more manageable downs and distances, anticipate what passes are coming against them. But I would really feel better if Matt Milano were there.
Agree.
And I think Bills
he might be by December, so they just got to stay in the mix,
Right.
and we'll see. The final group,
God,
we
oh my
went
God,
chalk.
oh my God.
It's the teams that were in the final four. But
Oh my
hey,
God.
it's a power poll. It's the favorites. The Lions 4th, so that should make you feel better, Cynthia, that they're not higher.
That's right.
Lions 4th, Ravens 3rd, 49ers 2nd, Chiefs 1st. So basically how the last season would end. And that's fine. It's a power poll, and there's really not huge reasons to go against any of these teams. The 49ers maybe in the short term, but in the long term, it's kind of hard to argue with who they've been. I'm finding, at least for this exercise, not a lot of juice here, not a lot of disagreement. We all had the Chiefs first. None of us had the 49ers anywhere lower than 3rd. And the others were pretty consistent too. We were basically in agreement on these teams. If there was a team here, I'm going to just go hard because I'd be surprised if any of these teams didn't make the playoffs. But if you had to choose one of these 4 teams that did not make the playoffs, I actually think I would choose the 49ers.
We're lock solid there.
Same.
We talked about all
Really?
the weird stuff that's going on in Santa Clara right
And the
now.
division and the schedule.
I mean, think about it. First game's against the Jets. That's like a hard first one if things aren't put back together. And like once that if it's hard to get things back together if you don't get the chemistry going. And I don't know. I also just trust quarterbacks more, and I think the quarterbacks on those other teams are just significantly more trustable.
I find it interesting how good the Chiefs look on paper when the last couple of years on paper going into the year, there was actually more concerns about them.
Yep.
And, they won the Super Bowl both of those years. This year, it feels like there's less, and I don't know. There's not really many things to pick apart with them. Maybe the cornerback.
Yeah, we do kind of hand wave away L'Jarius Sneed in his departure a little bit, but it's hard to overlook.
To me, it's more
the
human
best player in
nature.
the
I got
world.
into it with Pete Sweeney and Arrowhead Pride. That to me, it's more just like human nature, and even that might not be, or just like the luck of the draw. That like, hey, you just might not get through this single elimination tournament unscathed again, just because it's hard to do.
That's kind of the way I feel like. When I close my eyes and think of the difference between the AFC and the NFC, it's like the NFC, those teams should make the playoffs, and they're probably kind of going to fall the way we see them after week 4. But in the AFC, we see you mix, and it's like a single elimination tournament, could roll the dice either way. That's where it gets more difficult.
But they also are, the most likely team to have the 1 seed,
Sure.
just because the schedule is not
Sure.
that tough and the division's not.
But
that tough.
even so, I still think that the 2 games they would have to play really tough people. It's not like it doesn't. Like the AFC to me, like, do you want to play CJ Stroud? Do you want to play the Bengals? Do you want to play the Ravens? Do you want? I'm like, the answer is kind of no. Like for all of that.
So we're not exactly putting all of our predictions out here. We will have an AFC, NFC preview. We'll also have a game day view season preview where we get into the numbers of it all and try to pick who's making the Super Bowl there too. And
I
fun.
have a request.
Yes.
Can your kids pick their Super Bowl favorites too? They need to be in the mix just for that.
I'll ask.
Yeah.
I will ask. I mean,
I feel like in a few years we'll get yours too. There's
Ellis will pick the
Well,
Rams.
yeah.
She's not really into the other 31 teams.
Who cares?
And I think the Walker will pick the Texans, which would be a fun.
But I think
Super Bowl.
Walker is like he's really on it.
He's on it now. He's on.
You would be
Got it.
careful.
We're
He
here.
might be coming for your job. Walker might be coming
Bring
for
it.
your job.
Bring it.
Greg's cool with that.
It's hard. This is a daily show. We need. Yeah.
Well, if it's going to be
We need to
every
fill
day
these chairs.
forever,
There we go.
Walker better be training for this.
That's right. Every day forever includes Wednesday, at least Wednesday morning, where we'll be recapping all the cuts around Cut Down Down. Actually, tweet at me. Let me know. We've been putting up the podcast at the exact same time every day. Let me know on Twitter if for Cut Down Day you want to get it out there sooner. My instinct is actually, okay, it's all the cuts, and I know it's not going to be like crazy huge news, but this is a day as someone who's into just like how teams are formed, I'm really into. So I'm thinking about just putting that one out when it's ready. So let me know if you want that, if you don't, or if we should
Tweet it,
hold
Gregg.
for the older, or if you want to hold it for overnight. Thank you, Eric. Let's play the music. For Patrick Claybon. Yeah, catch him, Cynthia, on Fantasy Live. Like I said, game day view will start a week from Friday. Week 1.
We're
You catch
here.
it on NFL Network, but it was a pleasure to have you guys. Till next
I
time.
love you guys.
Love you too.